What if I told you the Canadian government has a gift for entrepreneurs that could be worth $500,000 to your business? It sounds too good to be true, and for most people, it is. But for a select group of Canadian business owners who understand how the system really works, this isn't a fantasy, it's a strategic advantage. The government isn't just handing out cash, but they have put a program in place that, if you use it correctly over time, could save you $500,000 in costs you were going to spend anyway. The catch? The Canada Revenue Agency and the federal government have built a system full of hurdles, competition, and fine print. They don't make it easy. So, what is this mysterious $500,000 gift? It's not a lottery ticket. It's not a one-time grant. It's the long-term strategic use of a powerful federal program called Can Export SMEs. This program is designed to help Canadian businesses grow by expanding into international markets. In simple terms, the government will reimburse you for a significant portion of the money you spend to develop export opportunities. Think of it as the government co-investing in your global ambition. They are willing to share the risk because when you succeed internationally, you create jobs, innovation, and wealth right here in Canada. That's the theory. But the reality is a fiercely competitive process. For the 2025-2026 fiscal year, over 4,000 businesses applied. Only about 40% were approved. That's a majority of applicants, more than 2,000 entrepreneurs, who walked away with nothing. Why? Because they didn't understand the unwritten rules of the game. Today, we're going to change that for you. We will break this down into 5 key parts. First, we'll explore the core mechanics of the Can Export SMEs program, how the money actually works. Second, we'll look at who is eligible and, more importantly, the profile of a company that actually wins the funding. Third, I'll introduce you to 2 fictional entrepreneurs, John and Mary, to illustrate the night and day difference between a winning and a losing application. Fourth, we'll cover the 5 most common and costly mistakes that get applications thrown out. And finally, I'll show you how accessing $50,000 this year can realistically compound into $500,000 in savings over the next several years. And stay with me, because at the end of this video, I'll share the single most overlooked detail in the applicant's guide that can instantly signal to the government that your project is a top priority for them. It's a simple tweak that can move your file from the bottom of the pile to the top. Let's start with the fundamentals. The Can Export SMEs program isn't a loan. You don't pay it back. It's a cost-sharing program. For the 2026-2027 funding year, the government has allocated a $31 million pool of money for this. Here's how it works. For an eligible project, the government will reimburse you for up to 50% of your costs. The funding for a single project ranges from a minimum of $10,000 to a maximum of $50,000. This means your total project cost must be between $20,000 and $100,000. If you spend $100,000 on a project to break into the German market, for example, you could get a check for $50,000 back from the government. This is real cash back in your bank account, not a tax credit. It's a direct reduction of your expenses. You can only have one active project at a time, and there's an annual cap. You cannot receive more than $99,999 in a single year across all the Can Export programs combined. This detail is crucial for our $500,000 strategy later on. The types of expenses they cover are exactly what you'd expect for export development. This includes business travel to a new market, participation in trade shows and fairs, translation of your marketing materials, and even fees for legal or business advice in your target country. They are essentially subsidizing the riskiest and most expensive parts of international expansion. Now, you might be thinking, Daniel, this sounds great, but what's the catch? The catch is that you have to spend the money first. This is a reimbursement program. You must have the capital to fund the entire project up front. The government will not give you the money in advance. This is the first hurdle where many businesses stumble. They don't have the cash flow to spend $100,000 and wait for the $50,000 reimbursement. The government sees this as a feature, not a bug. It filters for businesses that are financially stable and serious about their expansion plans. They want to see that you have skin in the game. Now, let's talk about who gets this money. On paper, the eligibility seems straightforward. You need to be a for-profit company incorporated in Canada. You need an active Canada Revenue Agency business number and have a physical presence here. You need to have generated between $100,000 and $100 million in revenue in the last fiscal year. But meeting these criteria just gets you in the door. It doesn't get you the money. Remember that 40% approval rate? To be in that winning group, you need to have what the program advisors are really looking for: strong economic ties to Canada. This is the core of the entire selection process. The government is investing in your project because they expect a return on that investment for the Canadian economy. Your application needs to tell a compelling story about that return. It's not just about what the money will do for your business, it's about what your business's success will do for Canada. Will your expansion create new jobs at your facility in Calgary? Will you be sourcing more raw materials from Canadian suppliers? Is the intellectual property for your product developed and owned in Canada? The more you can prove that your growth benefits Canada, the stronger your application becomes. They want to fund companies that are deeply rooted in the Canadian economic fabric. A business that just has a mailing address in Toronto but does all its manufacturing and research offshore will have a very difficult time getting approved, even if they meet all the other criteria. This is where our two entrepreneurs come in. Let's meet John and Mary. Both run successful, incorporated Canadian businesses. Both have revenues of around $5 million a year. Both want to expand into the United States. They both decide to apply for the Can Export SMEs program, seeking the maximum $50,000 in funding for a $100,000 project. But they approach it in completely different ways. Let's start with John. John runs a company that imports high-end furniture from Italy and resells it to Canadian retailers. He's successful, but his economic ties to Canada are shallow. His business is primarily logistical. He wants to use the Can Export funding to set up a similar distribution network in the U.S. Midwest. In his application, John focuses entirely on what the funding will do for him. He writes about how the $50,000 will increase his profit margins, allow him to hire a U.S. sales manager, and boost his company's revenue. He describes his project costs: flights to Chicago, trade show booth fees, and marketing materials. His application is technically correct. He fills out all the forms and provides the financial statements. He meets the basic eligibility. But his application tells a story about making his own business richer. It doesn't tell a story about enriching Canada. The application doesn't mention creating any new jobs in Canada. It doesn't mention increasing purchases from Canadian suppliers because he doesn't have any. The core of his business happens in Italy and the United States. He's asking the Canadian government to fund an operation that primarily benefits foreign economies. Now let's look at Mary. Mary runs a company in British Columbia that manufactures specialized sensors for the agricultural industry. Her research, development, and manufacturing all happen in-house at her facility in the Fraser Valley. She uses local suppliers for her components and employs a team of 25 engineers and technicians. Mary also wants to expand into the United States, specifically targeting the massive agricultural market in California. Like John, she applies for the $50,000 grant to fund a $100,000 project. But her application tells a very different story. Mary frames her expansion as a Canadian success story waiting to happen. She explains that breaking into the California market will require her to double her production capacity. She includes a detailed projection showing that if her export project is successful, she will need to hire 5 more technicians and 2 more engineers at her BC facility within the next 18 months. She highlights that the increased production will lead to a 30% increase in orders from her Canadian suppliers in Ontario and Quebec. She emphasizes that the intellectual property for her sensors was developed in partnership with a Canadian university and is owned by her Canadian corporation. Her application isn't just about her company's growth, it's about the ripple effect that growth will have across the Canadian economy. She is asking the government to partner with her to create Canadian jobs and strengthen Canadian innovation. When the CAN Export Program advisors review these 2 applications, the choice is clear. John's application is self-serving. Mary's application is nation-building. Both are asking for the same amount of money, but Mary is offering a much higher return on investment for Canada. Mary gets the funding. John gets a rejection letter. This is the fundamental difference, and it's what the majority of rejected applicants fail to grasp. They write applications that are all about their own problems and their own needs. The winning applications are about opportunity and mutual benefit. Let me know in the comments, have you ever thought about your business in terms of its economic benefit to Canada? Is that a metric you consider? It's a crucial mindset shift for anyone looking to access government funding. Now, you might be thinking, Daniel, my business is more like John's than Mary's. Does that mean I have no chance? Not necessarily. It means you need to be more creative in how you frame your project, and perhaps even adjust your business strategy. Could you start sourcing some of your components from a Canadian supplier? Could your expansion project include a research partnership with a Canadian institution? You need to find a way to build a more compelling Canadian value proposition. This is the kind of strategic planning we do with our clients every day. It's about looking at the system as it is and positioning your business to succeed within it. If you're feeling like this is a puzzle you can't solve on your own, there's a link in the description to book a confidential consultation. We can help you find the Canadian angle that will make your application stand out. Now, let's move on to the 5 biggest mistakes that will get your application sent straight to the rejection pile. These are the technical errors and strategic blunders that kill thousands of applications every year. Mistake number 1. An incomplete or inaccurate application. This sounds basic, but it's the most common reason for immediate disqualification. The applicant's guide is dense and specific. If you miss a signature, leave a section blank, or provide conflicting information between forms, they will not call you to clarify. They will simply set your application aside and move to the next one. They have thousands to get through. You must treat it with the same precision as a tax filing. Mistake number 2. Applying for ineligible expenses. The guide clearly lists what is covered and what is not. You cannot claim the salaries of your existing employees. You cannot claim costs related to operating in a market where you already have a strong foothold. The program is for new market entry. If an advisor sees you trying to claim ineligible costs, it immediately signals that you haven't read the rules, and it destroys your credibility. Mistake number 3. A weak or generic project plan. Your application needs to be specific. It's not enough to say you're going to explore the European market. You need to say you are attending the Anuga Food and Beverage Fair in Cologne, Germany on these specific dates with the goal of meeting with 3 specific distributors you have already identified. You need to show that you have done your homework and that this is a well-researched strategic initiative, not a fishing expedition. A vague plan signals high risk, and the government's goal is to manage its risk. Mistake number 4, failing to disclose other government funding. This is a big one. On your application, you must declare any and all funding you have received from federal, provincial, or municipal governments over the past year. If you fail to disclose something and they find out, your application will be rejected and you could be barred from applying in the future. They see it as a serious breach of trust. The CRA and other government departments have systems to track this. They will find out. Be transparent. Mistake number 5. The project has already started. You cannot apply for funding for activities that have already taken place. The effective start date of your project is the date you receive the email from the Trade Commissioner Service confirming that your application has been received and is being evaluated. Any expenses incurred before that date are ineligible. Many entrepreneurs make a deposit on a trade show booth or book flights before they apply, and in doing so, they disqualify those expenses. You must wait for the green light. Avoiding these 5 mistakes is the baseline. It gets you past the first filter. But to win, you need to combine a technically perfect application with a compelling Canadian value story, just like Mary did. So, how do we get from a $50,000 grant to a $500,000 saving? This is where the long-term strategy comes in. The $500,000 isn't a single gift. It's the result of consistently and strategically leveraging the Can Export program and others like it over a period of 5 to 10 years. Let's go back to Mary. Her first project in California is a success. The $50,000 grant from Can Export effectively made her $100,000 investment 50% cheaper. Her risk was cut in half. Because of that success, her business grows. She hires those new employees. The next year, she targets a new market. Maybe it's Texas, or maybe she sets her sights on the European Union. She puts together a new project plan, this time for a $70,000 expansion. She applies to Can Export again and gets $35,000 in reimbursement. The year after that, she tackles another market, another project, another grant. She is consistently reducing the cost of her global expansion by up to 50% year after year. Remember the annual cap of just under $100,000? A highly ambitious company could potentially run 2 consecutive projects within a year, or apply to different Can Export streams and get close to that $100,000 limit in reimbursement annually. If you can secure, on average, $50,000 in funding every year for 10 years, that is $500,000 in cash that has been reimbursed to your company. That is $500,000 you did not have to spend to achieve your global growth. This is the gift. The gift is a long-term partnership. It's the government's willingness to repeatedly share the cost of your ambition, as long as that ambition continues to benefit the Canadian economy. Each successful project builds your credibility and makes your next application even stronger. You are creating a track record of success, both for your business and as a reliable partner for the government. Furthermore, this strategy can be stacked with other government programs and tax incentives. For example, the equipment Mary buys for her expanded production line might be eligible for the Accelerated Investment Incentive. This allows her to deduct a much larger portion of the asset's cost in the first year, further improving her cash flow. A new vehicle purchased for the business could see its first-year depreciation deduction tripled from 15% to 45%. When you combine $50,000 grants from Can Export With thousands of dollars in tax savings from accelerated depreciation, the financial impact becomes immense. This is how sophisticated entrepreneurs think. They don't see taxes and government programs as a burden. They see them as a system to be understood and optimized. They build a capital strategy that legally minimizes their tax burden while maximizing the funding they can access. It's a complete reversal of the typical mindset. If you have a business partner or a friend who is trying to grow their business internationally, please share this video with them. You could be saving them from a massive financial headache and putting them on a path to accessing hundreds of thousands of dollars. The path to that $500,000 figure is not easy. It requires diligence, strategic planning, and a deep understanding of what the government is looking for. It requires you to build a business that is fundamentally good for Canada. But it is achievable. We have seen it happen. Finally, as promised, here is the single most overlooked detail that can put your application at the top of the pile. When you read the CanExport SMEs Applicants Guide, you will find a section that lists the government's priority sectors for trade. These are industries like agri-food, clean technologies, digital industries, and advanced manufacturing. If your business and your project fall squarely into one of these priority sectors, you need to make that crystal clear in the very first paragraph of your project description. Don't bury it. State it up front. For example, this project will expand our Canadian-made advanced manufacturing sensor technology into the U.S. agricultural market, directly aligning with the government's stated trade priorities in both the advanced manufacturing and agri-food sectors. A sentence like that is a flag to the program advisor. It tells them that your project doesn't just offer a generic benefit to Canada. It helps the government achieve its own specific strategic goals. You are making their job easier. You are showing them that you are not just asking for money, but you are a partner in building the future of the Canadian economy they have been mandated to support. It's a simple thing, but in a competitive field of 4,000 applicants, it can make all the difference. Building a successful business in Canada is hard enough. Don't leave free money on the table. The government has put these programs in place to help you grow. It's your job to learn the rules of the game and use them to your advantage. If you got value from this video and want to learn more about the hidden strategies for building and protecting your wealth in Canada, hit that subscribe button. We release videos like this every week, and it's free financial education that could save you a fortune. Thank you for your time today. Now go build your empire.